Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
and we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast on this Tuesday. I am Sterling Holmes, joined by JB Brisco. That's where you can find him on the X, myself at Homestretch KC. Brisco, things are pretty good out here in KC, huh?
I hope we never either get too tired or too forgetful to say things like 7th consecutive AFC Championship game. Because tomorrow's not guaranteed. Yesterday wasn't perfect, but right now we are watching one of the most amazing things that's ever happened in the NFL, and it's happening for the football team that calls Kansas City, Missouri home. It's an unbelievable thing.
It really is what LeBron James promised originally when he went to Miami.
Yeah.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, 7. Like, that's what it was. That LeBron James is... prediction finally came true. It just happened to be not where he was at, but with the Kansas City Chiefs in regards to AFC Championship games appearances. It truthfully is just wild when you think back. Again, almost all of us who are on this right now, we've all grown up and seen some semblance of some teams in Kansas City that were not good, or maybe a semblance of hope, a glimmer of hope somewhere along the lines. Yet you were never able to crest to the mountaintop, let alone get to the penultimate game, right? Even the penultimate game, that is the AFC Championship game, would have been lovely. That never transpired, at least when you and me and our age group. So don't take anything for granted. And I always tell folks too, I never tell people how to fan. If you want to get after folks on Twitter, that is your responsibility. That's up to you. You can do that. Seth Kaiser, by the way, is doing a phenomenal job of that.
Yes.
The lawyer
even
himself.
he, by the way, even he is losing steam. He is confided. Not losing steam. It's growing old as an act to have to continue to operate.
And so what I tell folk is, who cares? If people want to complain about the refs, let them. Nothing will change. Those folks, the 31 other fan bases, can scream into the void, and their team will still not be where the Chiefs are at. No matter how much they cry, no matter how much they whine, no matter how much they annoy you. If you don't let it annoy you, as Slothy says, facts don't care about your feelings. They can cry all they want. Doesn't change the fact that the Chiefs are still in the AFC Championship game. So they can complain, they can whine, but nothing, and I repeat, nothing will change. And Teddy Bruschi, actually, you remember the old linebacker for the Patriots, even said, you know, when they went into that game and they talked about after the game saying, well, we knew it was us against them and the refs. Like, we knew that we weren't going to get any calls. You've already lost. You already lost. You can't win with that mindset. You're not going to win saying, well, here we go. They're going to beat us. We're going to get some bad call. Then if that's the case, why would you go helmet to helmet? If that's the case, then why would you even put yourself in a situation that Mahomes did slide late, but why would you go and headhunt at the guy? You're lucky that your teammate hit your dome out of the way, or else it would have been way worse. So I don't understand this whole thing. It is what it is. We'll get into some of the narrative-driven based with some referees, because I pulled up some fun numbers with Cleet Blakeman, who will be refereeing this game. That kind of puts that to rest. But that's where I'm at. If you don't let it bother you, crack open a cold one, drink an apple cider, a hot chocolate if you don't drink, and just enjoy the ride that the Chiefs are currently on. Who knows when, like the Mamba, who knows when it's going to start going down? Because right now, sure looks like we're still climbing up.
I understand also, you know, you as a fan, you wouldn't want there to be these like baseless claims that ultimately get used to invalidate what you've been seeing. I can tell you, man, by evidence of how many Patriots fans and how much Patriots media has really latched on to all of the current Chiefs stuff, it seems like most of the world has forgotten much more serious, much more active allegations that were levied against the Patriots over the course of many years. And frankly, man, like, I don't think that Spygate was the reason the Patriots did all that, but it was a gate. This is a referee gate. This has not achieved, there's no evidence to support any of this. The thing that riles me up, and this is, I know that like every few weeks, I say something along the lines of support your local media because it's important, and we are that here. The thing that really bothers me is when people on microphones, if it's doing the broadcast on television, perhaps the largest platform that you can have in sports media, or if it's people on Twitter with large Twitter followings, saying things that are easily refuted or highlighting things that do not deserve to be highlighted, that does inform the discourse that the rest of the country, the rest of the world is going to take with them into the next week. I find that deeply unfortunate when it's used irresponsibly. Unfortunately, a lot of people do use that power irresponsibly. And it's one of the reasons that I think, like, I'm dangerously close to paying Sterling a pretty large compliment. So go ahead and everybody batten down the hatches. It's why not only I think that there is an air of seriousness over what we do in a very silly thing, it's also why, like, I only want to do media with people who have some amount of responsibility in knowing that they will help shape the narrative. And thankfully, I'm not like leaving anybody out. I'm not doing any like sort of purposeful etching here. I think pretty much all of Kansas City local media has some understanding of that burden of the broadcaster. From your TV channels to your radio stations to your online sources to your writers, your beat reporters, your columnists. And I would say, because I know I'm mostly talking to fans and listeners who are trusting us more so than I'm talking to other media members right now, be as discerning as you can as a consumer of sports media. Be as discerning as you can to point out and recognize when people do not have your best interest in mind, when they do not have the truth in mind, and when they are causing problems for the discourse as a whole. You have to be the discerning one, which is unfortunate because it puts the responsibility back on you. But if you don't consume bad media, it will have one less pocket to be pulling change out of. And so ultimately, that's the thing that has really bothered me over the last 48 hours or so. And that I feel a little bit better now, having gotten that off my chest. And I think we're ready for our 7th consecutive AFC Championship game.
Yeah, it's not like Mark Schlereth, who's been talking all the time on Twitter, has ever admitted to doing anything illegal, right?
Right.
Yeah, maybe don't look that one up, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he did do something illegal in a game? Okay, sure. Yeah, that's a good call. And then Troy Aikman. I'm convinced that Troy Aikman was so angry and just outspoken on the broadcast because he doesn't want to see Patrick get that 4th Super Bowl ring and pass up his 3. Because right now he can say, look, I'm as good as Patrick. The second that Patrick gets number 4, Briscoe's going to tweet at him yet again.
I might not this time. Even last year, I didn't really need to. The first one was because I was calling me when you get 33%. The first one, I was ready. At this point, man, it's just like common knowledge that Troy Aikman does not seem to care for Patrick Mahomes very much. I'd like to think that's not my fault, but here we are.
All right, let's before we talk about the game itself, because I do think there's a lot of interesting and fascinating breakdown points that I want to get into with you, Brisco. Before we do that, though, Underdog, baby. You know about it. I know about it. We all know about it. Underdog. Did a couple Underdog lineups for the Chiefs game. Actually, for the Rams-Eagles game, too. I was at Brewtop watching with one of my boys from Philly, had a few brewskis, and was playing some Underdog. We both were able to get a little extra excitement right there on Underdog. I'm doing a fun one tonight for NBA. If anyone does NBA, feel free. I put a banger in there that's probably not going to hit, but who cares? Because it'll be fun either way. LeBron James, triple-double. Josh Hart, more than 8 assists. Russell Wilson, double-double. Oh, yeah, baby. And I also did it to where if I get 2
Probably not 3, Russell Wilson, right?
Russell Westbrook. Yeah, that would have been a pretty bold talk. No wonder the odds were so high. Let's be real. I was like, why are the odds so high for that? Yeah, that makes sense. But you do something like that. Let's say I only get 2 out of the 3 right. Oh, I'm still getting paid, baby. That's right. Underdog, take care of you. Higher or lower, you make the call right there on Underdog. So make sure you use code Arrowhead Addict to get $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, code Arrowhead Addict to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado, for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncbgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call 24/7 HOPE-LINE at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
Well, I have a number in my head. What do you think you just did?
Felt pretty good for the conditions, how cold it is with my lips being very chapped. Difficult to enunciate. I'll go. That was probably about an 8.9, 9.1. It felt really good.
9.3 is what I had locked in for you. That's a good performance championship week.
Yeah, that felt really good. Really good. The issue is, again, it's just really cold. It was brutal outside. But no one cares about that. What we do care about are the Chiefs playing the Bills. One of the talking points that I heard after the game, right, was what about the Chiefs wide receivers? Should there be a concern in regards to the lack of playing time or targets to Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins? I understand the concerns, but here's why I would not be concerned in that previous game and why I think there can be some cause for optimism going forward. The reason is the Texans have backup safeties and bad linebackers. Why would you attack Derek Stingley Jr. and Kamari Lassiter when you could go at Henry To'oTo'o, you could go at Al-Shahir, you can go at, Murray, no Jalen Petrie. So that's why the Chiefs' game plan was Travis Kelce. It wasn't like it was Patrick throwing the ball in extremely tight windows where Travis was coming down with 50-50 balls. It was, wow, Travis is wide the bleep open. I guess I'll throw to 87. That's what it came down to. So that's why I'm not worried about Hopkins or Hollywood Brown, because that wasn't the game plan in this particular game. Against the Bills, might be a little different. Matt Milano, very good linebacker. Maybe you don't try and test him quite as much, and you do go on the outside where the Bills secondary has been really beaten up. We'll see who's going to play in the secondary, especially at safety for Buffalo heading into the AFC Championship game. I believe, was it Taylor Rapp as well as one of their other safeties was in concussion protocol, happened on the onside kick. So we'll see secondary-wise there. But I just think the game plan doesn't have me worried in regards to D-Hop and Hollywood. What about you?
I agree with the vast majority of that. I want to make one key distinction, but just so I don't say it all again, game plan, matchups you're targeting, how the offense went. The offense had plenty of ways to be better, but I do think the game plan of it all specifically keeps me from worrying about Hollywood. He had that near bomb that was immediately followed by the Kelce Yak show returning in 2025. Who knew? But the biggest thing about Hollywood for me, he played 67% of the snaps. Now, before I go through some snap counts here, note that I think this was actually the lowest snap count total for the Chiefs offense in a game with the starters this year. They played just 51 offensive snaps. Now, that is long returns and short fields. That is some quick 3-and-outs and some explosive plays here and there. So, throughout the season, the Chiefs were averaging many, many more plays than this. They ran fewer in Week 18 with the backups, but I believe this was the lowest number of the season in terms of how many offensive snaps the Chiefs ran. I give you that precursor because it changes the math of some of these numbers a little bit. But Hollywood played 34 snaps, 67%. Xavier Worthy, the highest used of a wide receiver, 42 snaps, 82%. Great with where Worthy's at. About right for Hollywood. Wouldn't hurt to see a few more as they go, but sometimes it's the packages and where you are in the field. There's a little bit of that. Hollywood was a starter and essentially a full-time player. Juju Smith-Schuster was next with 21 snaps. It's 41%. I don't hate that number for him. He's a very useful football player. He will block his tail off. He is good at it, and he will be there in some moments running routes when you need him. So I have no issue with that. And then Justin Watson bottoms out to 4 snaps, by far his lowest mark of the season. I was pleasantly surprised by that. No offense to Justin Watson. They've gotten healthier now, and there are guys that should be above him. DeAndre Hopkins had 16 snaps, 31%. He played less than a third of the snaps, and it was less than a dozen and a half of them. He played more than Justin Watson, but less than Juju, which also puts him in like DeAndre Hopkins and Isaiah Pacheco played the same number of snaps. Peyton Hendershot played 2 fewer than those guys, just again to kind of put them in that bucket there.
How much 12 personnel did the Chiefs run with? Because that also makes a large difference when you had Kelce with Noah or Kelce with Hendershot out there.
And Gray played almost 60% of the snaps, so they used quite a bit of heavy, which again I think is pointing towards them wanting to target those linebackers to some extent, and also seeing if they could run out of it, which they didn't do to a great level. They even had a couple of snaps with Kingsley out there and an extra lineman and the whole deal. But so you're right. This is complicated. I don't think there is a singular answer, but I do think it's strange and not a good sign. Not necessarily the end of the world, but not a good sign that Hopkins only played 16 snaps in that game. I thought for sure, I mean, we saw him. I know he was in the red zone on the Kelce touchdown because he's behind him in all of the celebrations and the pictures of that I've seen. I figured that he would get used in the red zone. I'm wondering if he essentially almost only really got his usage down there. I haven't gone to see exactly what situations he was put in for, but I don't like that he has such a specialized role or such a small usage rate in this game. I also think, though, when you see Worthy and Hollywood at the top, those guys have speed in common. And DeAndre Hopkins is not speed at this point. Not exactly Lightning McQueen for all the things that he is excellent at. He might be a little more Doc Hudson at this point in his career, actually. I think it's something that we need to talk about and we needed to note. I think he will play more than that in the AFC Championship game, though. So I don't think it's going to be, it's not the end of the DeAndre Hopkins experience, but I think it's a little bit disappointing.
One of the more fascinating snap count breakdowns, I was on the defensive side, was Christian Roland Wallace playing only 3 snaps. He had been taking over as a slot corner a lot of times, especially for Shamari Connor. I wonder how much of that was just matchup dependent versus, again, the Bills have better wide receivers. They're secondary and tertiary guys. If Khalil Shakur's in there, you don't want Shamari Connor on Khalil Shakur. That's too fast for him, right? So
I agree with you, but I think he's going to be there.
That's kind of my question is how much of it was matchup driven versus, they just think Shamari or they like Shamari Connor better than Christian Roland Wallace. One thing I will point out, Jason brought this up and I expanded off it. So and we think it's the final play and the final snap for Christian Roland Wallace was early in that game. He looked around befuddled. They had called
arms out,
right?
Yeah.
And what he did was he just blitzed because I'm assuming, as we all said, if you're in a Spags defense, if you don't know what to do, you're probably going on a blitz. So he just decided to blitz. Well, I don't think he played another snap after that when he threw his hands up in the air. So that's my question is to the Chiefs to say, okay, we're not playing you because of lack of understanding of the playbook, a miscommunication. Was it matchup driven? Is it just because Shamari versus Christian Roland Wallace? I just have, I guess, a few questions in regard to who will be the slot, because if it is Khalil Shakur or Matt Collins or Amari Cooper or Keon Coleman, that is a lot different than what the Texans wide receiving core was throwing out there.
Yeah, I think it's mostly about Spags and Shamari Connor. I noticed the arms out thing in real time and we're going like, that seems like a problem. But then I think on one of the later blitzes, Justin Reed did feigned some confusion and then blitz too. That could have been an acting job. I really don't know for sure. But I think that it's pretty clear cut what the hierarchy in the slot is, even though it's not what I would do, especially having Jaylen Watson back. I would have been perfectly happy to see Jaylen Watson and Joshua Williams on the outside and McDuffie in the slot. Joshua Williams, you know how many defensive snaps he played?
0.
That's a goose egg, friends. So I don't know. He had 2 special teams mistakes. Also, that's the story for him. I was a little surprised. I was very surprised to see him get shut out entirely. But what we saw from Connor, he got 38 of his snaps in the slot, according to PFF's positional charting here, and then a handful more in the box, 8 more in the box. In fact, he was really never used as a air quotes traditional safety. A couple snaps here might have been some of those injuries shuffled around. Brian Cook was gone for a little bit, but ultimately I think what we've seen Spags say is that he's going to want his 5 favorite defensive backs out there. And I think Connor is still one of them because he does hit. He is great on the edge or in the slot against the run. He is a good blitzer there too. So I think for Spags, this isn't really an endorsement, But I think Spags is saying, I will take a lesser coverage player for a more beneficial everything else player in the slot. Again, I think McDuffie going into the slot is the little power move that they've not pulled that lever of. And if it's Najee Johnson and Jaylen Watson, I'm a little less confident in that. And it was Najee Johnson as the next corner, certainly ahead of Roland Wallace and ahead of Williams. So it is just sort of this amalgamation of all these different things and these questions we've had all year. But Connor got hurt in week 15. He had the concussion. He missed 16 and 17. He played a little bit in week 18. And almost all of those snaps, at least the vast majority of those snaps, came in the slot. So I just think this is where the Chiefs are going to keep putting him, even though it is a downgrade in terms of coverage. And it may even be a coverage downgrade from Christian Roland Wallace.
Yeah. From Pete Sweeney, he says from Next Gen Stats, McDuffie lined up across from Nico Collins on 22 of his 32 routes, and McDuffie allowed 2 receptions for 42 yards on 4 targets. One was the incredible catch by Nico. That's not really much that Trent McDuffie could have done. That was a perfect throw, perfect catch. That's going to happen. He also wanted to say that average target separation was 1 yard. McDuffie was nails in that game. He was outstanding, and you saw what happened when he went out. Remember that? When he went out
terrifying. I sure do. Yeah, I do. It was bad.
And the second he came back in, what happened? They didn't get another yard on that drive. It goes to show you the importance and the impact of Trent McDuffie. Let's talk about Jaylen Watson. I don't want to spend too much time on the secondary here, but Jaylen Watson playing.
It will matter in the AFC Championship game. We're not spending too much time on on Joe Mixon or anything. It doesn't matter.
But 40 or so snaps for Jaylen Watson was a little bit of a surprise, the amount he played in this game. And the fact he played, I think, as good as he did. Overall, again, we're not talking about him going up against some really good wide receivers. The Bills, on the other hand, they don't have great wide receivers. They're almost like 2022 Chiefs-y a little bit, right? Where they have that was when Juju's first time around when he was pretty good, but not like a needle mover necessarily. It's a lot of wide receiver twos, basically. It's basically what the Chiefs thought their wide receiver group was going to be last year and then wasn't. The Bills have actually done that this year, and they've been that. Curtis Samuel and Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper and Khalil Shakur is having a really, really nice year. And Mac Hollins, who's been surprisingly great in the red zone, great blocker. But, what do you make of Jaylen Watson and his performance?
I was heartened, and it was about the workload that I was hoping he would get. 59%, like you said, 40 total snaps there. When Charles Omenihu came back from his first game, that was obviously ACL, and so you're getting confidence in your knee and everything. I think he hit an even 50%. I did just double check just to follow up on Pete's stat there. McDuffie was outside every snap of the game virtually. Again, PFF's charting, they've got D-line, box, slot corner, wide corner, free safety. He has 1 snap in D-line, box, and free safety because there'll be a little bit of movement and pre-snap movement, post-snap movement, and all that. He just lived on the outside. So when Collins went into the slot, he wasn't lined up against Trent McDuffie, which wouldn't have been my plan if, with the ability to just have like your best corner follow the best receiver. But they, Snead did that some last year. McDuffie's not doing that. That's okay. Go ahead.
And I said that from the get-go. If I'm Houston, I'm not saying I'm smarter than the Houston Texans and Bobby Slowick and D'Amico Ryans. But if you saw that Trent McDuffie wasn't going to follow him into the slot, I said, why don't you just roll with Nico Collins in the slot?
Yeah.
He was successful in the slot. He's done it 20-some% odds throughout the season. I
would have planned that way too. Yes.
I don't know why.
Challenge Shamari Connor rep after rep after rep. Hey, you've got a safety playing slot corner. Here's Nico Collins. Get wrecked. Like that absolutely would have been my
and I said that going into the game, and again, a lot of people can say hindsight's 2020, but if I was a Houston fan, I would have had some questions in regards to why that did not happen.
Yeah. Anyway, so back to Watson. I was happy with how he played. Again, I haven't gone and done like the single player all 22 watch through to make sure that my eyes weren't lying to me in real time. But I felt pretty good about that. I feel like he didn't get challenged a terribly outsized amount of time. It wasn't like they were picking on him. Certainly, he didn't have the preseason game finale performance when it's like, oh, this guy's a problem right now. And I think he'll play more snaps in the championship game, and he should probably look better in the championship game. So I think the fact that he got through apparently feeling fine, played, I'm guessing, pretty much all the snaps the Chiefs really wanted him to play in his first game back, I think is an absolutely great sign. Now he's got a whole other week to recover from that game and then to get ready for the next one. I think you got to feel really good about McDuffie and Watson being back on the outside, even though I would put McDuffie in the slot more often.
Agreed. And I would play Joshua Williams, but that's apparently neither here nor there.
Yeah, hard to play him when Spags has him on Mars. So
what do you make of the offensive line? Because early on, I had a lot of concerns. Joe Thuney was making me question the decision early on, and then he really settled down. If you look at PFF, Trey Smith had himself just an absolutely horrendous day. Again, take it as you will. PFF, I believe he was the, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought he was the lowest graded Chief by a fairly wide margin.
I didn't see the grades this week. I don't know how that happened.
Let me see if I can pull up Chiefs PFF just to make sure I'm not misremembering the game. Let me see if I go to schedule. I go to Bills, view game.
You can also try to get us there, but then we're just both Googling things and typing and talking as we search.
We go to lineups. Well,
I'll get it for you in a second.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I clicked on the wrong one. Here we go. I'm
almost to the old Chiefs chart here.
You might find it before me.
So you can ask me the question you're going to have, and then I'll.
No. Well, okay. The question was the offensive line. How did you view the performance against what is a very good Texans defensive line? The Texans got some pressure. Will Anderson, I think, had himself an outstanding day overall. Danielle Hunter, though, was somewhat of a non-factor. But just how did you view the O-line in general, especially with Joe Thuney at left tackle?
Trey Smith did have the second lowest grade for Chiefs players in this game, ahead of Brian Cook, by the way. There's the payoff on that one.
Thank you.
Welcome. I felt like, especially early on, I was absolutely with you. It was like becoming alarming on a level that I felt like I kind of warned everybody about, like the downside of it, but it was still like, this is kind of a problem. And kind of a bummer also that the Chiefs running game was just so toothless. It got better when Kareem Hunt was out there because he's better at making chicken salad out of chicken poor blocking. And so or even just getting the most chicken salad out of whatever chicken blocking that he has in front of him. The thing that this is a little bit of already kind of looking ahead, so we can spend as much time on either side of the cutoff as you want. The thing that's interesting about this matchup and the issues we saw and what it's going to mean next week, like Steve in the comments says, Thuney getting walked back is a problem. Absolutely. But also Willie Anderson is extremely good at doing that. And that is Joe Thuney's weakness. He just doesn't have enough sand in his pants and doesn't have long enough arms to get the leverage that you need against Willie Anderson.
Could you put sand in his pants, though? You know how you fill up, those movable basketball goals and you'd put sand in the back so that way when you play on 6-foot rims that you wouldn't fall and break your dome? Have we thought about putting sand in Thuney's pants?
You'd have to ask Mark Schlereth. Because I think that'd be a violation, but I think he knows how that works. So the issue with Buffalo and the difference between Houston and Buffalo, I'm glad that landed for you because that ball was coming in, that baseball was coming in like a beach ball to me. I was raring back to hit that one. The Bills have Ed Oliver, the Texans have Will Anderson. When you look at where the strength of the pass rush is coming from, I don't want to say I'm quite red alert on Mike Caliendo versus Ed Oliver, but I'm alerted. I am awake, and I'm looking at the matchup, and I'm a little bit concerned.
Orange? Would it be orange?
Yes.
Because like green's a no-go, yellow's like I'm concerned, orange is like, okay, I'm pretty darn concerned. Red is like Aaron Donald versus Caliendo. This is bad news Bears.
Yeah, I'm definitely code orange, and I think that being on the wrong end of maybe the most glaring matchup in the game, at least in terms of your offense versus their defense, that scares me. And then you're also putting up an average left tackle against their average edge rush. And they're not going to do this. I don't think they're going to do this. I was 60-40 DJ Humphries last week. I thought that it was a slightly better choice and a slightly more likely choice. Obviously, they went with Thuney, right? I think we're just riding out what we got right now. I don't think we're going to see any changes at the left side. But if you said like, hey, Josh, you've got these 6 offensive linemen to build your line out of to face the Buffalo Bills, I'd go, oh, cool. Okay. Humphries, Thuney, Creed, Smith, and Juwan Taylor. Like I wouldn't even hesitate, but the context of this season does matter, right? I'm not surprised they stuck with Thuney. I understand that the cohesion of that was worth something to Andy Reid. Having Caliendo, who's been around since training camp, meant something to Andy Reid and Andy Heck and all of them. So again, I never thought that it was going to make or break the run because I think Thuney and Humphries were both tall enough to ride, so to speak. that it was never going to be the playoff ender that it could have been with a bad Kingsley game. Although Kingsley getting the activation on Saturday while Wanya Morris was a healthy scratch was not on my bingo card.
Shocking. The only thing you could think of is if they like him as an extra blocker because he might be a better pass catcher, which is a hilarious thing to think about. But yeah,
because when you did it, I do think it's probably a sixth lineman move because again, Kingsley got a couple of sixth lineman snaps,
a little quicker, a little more athletic, I guess potentially. But yeah, I was with.
But if somebody gets hurt, are you playing him? Like I don't know, Jim. But I guess at that point, DJ Humphries is your backup left tackle. And so you're not really worried about who your third left tackle is because at that point, you're bleeped. We don't practice bleeped as
Peyton Manning.
Melvin once said about Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's – I think it needs to be a heavily discussed storyline. I would rather, again, I hope everybody hears my onus behind this. I would much rather have Joe Thuney on Ed Oliver, given the opportunity to pick that matchup, even at the cost of shaking up left tackle. But I'd be really, really surprised if the Chiefs did make a change on the O-line ahead of the championship game.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. I think at this point you ride Joe Thuney until it proves that the ride is broken, which I don't think it's going to break. I think it will do just enough. It's like the Timberwolf. I don't know why I'm making so many Worlds of Fun.
A lot of Worlds of Fun references
but
today,
it's been a long time since I've gone too. But like the Timberwolf, you don't always feel safe on it. It's a wooden roller coaster. You're like, this might break. It's been here a long time, but I got off it and had myself a good time. It worked. And I'm
Josh Allen's kind of like the Patriot, right? Or it's kind of this high flying blue and red, strap in and go flying kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a good call. It's a good call. Yeah, and I do wonder because the Texans have a great interior offensive line as well, but their best part was their edge rushers. Clearly, for Buffalo, their best is their interior, while their edge rushers, as you mentioned, they're fine, but they're not necessarily massive needle movers. And then if you played the Eagles, now this is, again, looking ahead, I'm not trying to get too far ahead of myself, but if you play the Eagles, they have a great defensive line in general. But again, that interior with the way Jalen Carter's playing, you're like, oh, bleep, I don't want that going against Mike Caliendo. So, again, just some things to consider here. I wonder if that's a 2-week, but you also have 2 weeks to plan for the Super Bowl, so maybe they would do something then and there. But I think you're probably right. Joe Thuney will be the left tackle against the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, on the other hand, had a pretty good offensive line overall. Deion Dawkins is incredible. Whatever your thoughts on if he moves early or not, he does not get called. Juwan Taylor rarely gets called. The one he got called on, I actually was pretty surprised by. It was seems kind of normal.
It's almost like the refs are just kind of making it up as they go.
but
almost.
But how do you think the Chiefs' defensive line goes up against not only a great, really, really good Bills offensive line, but also a quarterback who can move around like that? Because I mentioned that with C.J. Stroud, where C.J. Stroud is he can move in the pocket, but he's not Josh Allen, Lamar, not even Patrick Mahomes back there. He had a couple of nice runs out there, especially for a guy who got banged up. But the Chiefs' defensive line looked just outstanding. 8 sacks. Karlaftis was picking on Blake Fisher, which I mentioned going into the game. They just progressively get worse from that left side to right. So they just, instead of putting Karlaftis on Laramie, they said, Karlaftis, you're actually going to go up on Blake Fisher. Just beat him. And he did time and time again. How do you see this matchup playing out and how they, I guess, played confidence-wise heading into this game?
I mean, I have almost nothing but positives to say about how the defensive line performed against the Texans, right? Subject one is that you get a great game from George Karlaftis doing a whole bunch of very George Karlaftis-y things. You get a great game from Chris Jones demanding all of the attention and freeing things up for the guys around him. And many of those guys took advantage of those opportunities, plus well-timed blitzes by Spags, obviously beyond the D-line, but the entire pass rush that way. I got nothing negative to say about any of that, really. It's masterful. The problem is that the offensive line was one of the facilitating factors of that being a game that the Chiefs could take over that way. The fact that I don't think Buffalo is going to end up in that space, and also that Buffalo has not been a team that's made these brutal self-inflicted wound mistakes that the Ravens made just enough of, and that the Chiefs make during the regular season all the time, but don't make anymore, apparently. I don't know if you saw the stat about them and turnovers, but I can grab that for you in a second.
Dude, that is absurd.
Let me just read it then, because I got it.
Yeah.
From NFL and CBS, there have been 280 turnovers in the NFL since week 12. The Chiefs have committed 0 of them. 8 straight games without a turnover is the longest streak by any team in the Super Bowl era, including playoffs. The longest turnover-free streak in the Super Bowl era.
By the way, you brought this up with Buffalo and Baltimore, and it's why I said I think Baltimore is a better matchup for Kansas City because I think the Bills are the better team. I had the Bills winning that game, and this is wild to think of, but if you can almost remove yourself from the first few years of Josh Allen, I think you'll be with me here. The Ravens, I said, had the highest variance. They have they probably did have the highest upside of almost any team in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They also had probably the lowest floor of anyone in the playoffs.
Of the contenders.
Of the contenders. Yeah. I don't want to, yes. Thank you for the caveat. Of the contenders. And you saw it both in that game. You saw the first drive and the last drive of Lamar, and then you saw what happened in between. It was just a conundrum of, is this the same team? Right. The Bills, on the other hand, just said, we're going to play the same. Hey, Josh, we don't care if you throw for 300 yards. All we care about is winning. That, to me, is an evolution in the Buffalo Bills. That, to me, is them learning from their previous mistakes of, we're going to have to outscore every single team we go against. Josh, you're going to have to be a superhero. And Josh was to an extent, but with his legs. So, for me personally, I've been very impressed with Buffalo and their growth. And that's kind of why I said scared's not the right word. But I think a better matchup against Kansas City because I think Buffalo has learned from their mistakes, while I do think Baltimore is still trying to do the same thing every single playoff game, and they keep coming up with the same results. The Bills, I think, have learned.
And Josh Allen is like continuing to get better at football. I can't remember, somebody kind of threw this out like months and months ago, but that with Mahomes and Allen, they are both so much further advanced in their careers mentally than even the supercomputers that we remember prior to them. Brady and Manning, at the point that Mahomes and Allen are in their careers right now, they were not as far along, and Mahomes and Allen have these physical tools that make them absolute aliens. But remember, like, Peyton Manning, like, closed his eyes and directed the Broncos to a Super Bowl at the very, very end. Brady was able to continue doing that all the way through. But the advancements that both Mahomes and Allen have made in terms of protecting the football and making sure that they understand the value of not turning the ball over, I think is one of the things that's going to make both of them a couple of the all-time greats.
Yeah.
You also want to see them sling the thing. Like, that is what makes them so much fun. It's a catch-22 that way.
It's like what I want to watch versus what I understand is probably best overall for them winning football games. I mean, the Chiefs have won more football games in this more complete era than they did when Patrick was throwing for 5,000 yards, right? It's just looks different, but the results have been either the same or even considerably better.
I think there's organizational support there too. When you don't need to force your quarterback into superhero mode, they can, one, learn how to play quarterback in the way that they all got better at. And then also, if the offense does start falling apart around them, they can go into superhero mode and see if it works. It's just, there's a lot of variance in superhero mode.
A couple comments I want to get to. Slothy, well, yeah, of course they'll feel that pressure. I mean, it's not like they could possibly lose 4 crucial postseason games in a row. Yeah, they probably do, right? Because no team could lose 4 straight, very influential games in a row. Alexis says, I'm ready to swag surf on Victory Sunday. Who isn't? Ronson Trait says it's an evolution of Josh Allen not playing hero ball. We'll see. He was definitely tempted to pitch the ball on that run of the goal line. Great call. I saw that. I'm like, he is looking for James Cook. He is looking for him right here. Yeah. It's like him and Travis Kelce, they just get this in their mind, like, pitch it, find someone. I don't care. Pitch the damn ball. And then also, yeah, Steve, when is Butker looks good segment? Let's talk about Butker. I mentioned that early in the game when the Chiefs were up, what was that, 6-3? I go, I know the red zone struggles have not been ideal. I get it. But one positive from the Chiefs not moving the ball in the red zone, it's Harrison Butker. Get him some confidence early, see what he looks like, and that might help your decision-making if there is a long field goal, right? I thought Butker looked great, and that win did not bother him at all. It clearly bothered Jaime Fairbairn, whether it was mental or the wind itself. Even if you take away that 55-yarder, which was just a horrendous decision by Houston, the extra point right? Like
Yeah.
Butker did not let it. Every single one was true. It was pure. How much confidence does that give you in regards to moving forward with Harrison?
A little bit. We still don't have a real answer on the big question, though, which is how far out are they still confident in his leg? I think getting just some kicks to the uprights and getting the mechanics all right in that short intermediate range is all valuable. It's a good thing to mention. But his longest kick was 36 yards, 32, 36, an extra point, and then extra point 27. No distance at all. He did not kick a 40-yarder or beyond. So I think it's good to know, like, all right, if you do have that red zone flare out, Butker can come out and still pretty much get you 3 guaranteed points. Terms and conditions may apply, but you can feel confident about that. If they're down 31-28 with 3 seconds left and he's got a 55-yarder on Sunday, I'm going to be holding my breath till the ball goes through.
Yeah, fair. I see KC Chiefs 12 says, I missed the beginning of the show. Have you talked to D-Hop injury? I have not seen an injury to D-Hop.
No, it's something that's gotten thrown around a little bit in terms of trying to figure out why that snap count was so low. We have nothing official on that, and I don't even have anything kind of like unofficially. I don't know if there was something in the game. I don't know when his last snap came, but there was nothing post-game, in-game. Andy Reid on Monday didn't mention it, so I think we're just gonna, unless he shows up with something on Wednesday. I think it's mostly matchup and sort of positional, as we talked about. Maybe he's a little banged up. He had a lot of time. It feels like something is wrong there, but I don't know where exactly that comes from.
Yeah. Again, my thoughts. I think it's matchup driven more than anything else. That's why you saw the snap counts and the target share of those guys. Maybe I'm the buffoon here, but I just trust Andy and Patrick. They did not need to unleash the deep ball early and often. They did once to Hollywood, which was nice to see. Phenomenal throw by Patrick. You'd like to see Hollywood Brown come down with that ball. Probably one that he comes down with, 65% of the time? Maybe
something like that. It's a tough catch. Good ball.
Great ball. It's just not. That's not a super. It's not an 85, 90%. It's not 100%, 98% with Travis Kelce wide open in the middle of the field. No need to force it to the outside when the inside is working outstanding. Lauren Shank says, will the hosts go to New Orleans if we win Sunday? Hey, Lauren, go in there no matter what, baby. Go in there. Either
do.
Yeah, me, Patrick Allen will be going, and Ian McMillan off of Stacking the Box with myself. So Ian, if you guys know Ian from Stacking the Box, the national one that I do with him, he probably won't have a great time, especially if the Chiefs go, because he went against the Chiefs, and we've made some bets, and he is going to have to buy a lot of drinks for me down in New Orleans. So we'll have some fun down there. Heading down Sunday, that second. So we will
maximum mustache again this year.
If the Chiefs are there, yes. It's a playoff stash.
If they're not, are you going to forego it's so strong, and you have successfully made it just a part of your brand. I feel like you got to be the guy on Radio Row, the young guy on Radio Row with the mustache. I
did tell you last year when I was there, I interviewed Matt Ryan, and then in Tahoe this year, interviewed Matt Ryan, and he saw me and goes, wait a minute, I talked to you. We did a thing down in Vegas, right? And I'm like, yeah. How do you remember? He goes, it's the mustache. I'm like, see, Matty Ice remembers.
It becomes iconic. It's also, it's attached to your face, but it's stand out enough that it's on your face, so just a part of who you are, but it's stand out enough. It's not, oh yeah, I remember you because you have a beard. That's not very, or you have a goatee. But if you have a mustache that would make Burt Reynolds blush, Matty Ice is going to remember you.
But he somehow doesn't remember what Chris Jones said to him. We did ask him that.
Well, Sterling, does Chris Jones have a big bushy mustache?
Well, true.
Let me think.
There's so many jokes I wanted to make right there when you said no, not doing it.
Glad you did.
There's a couple things that you could make.
Thinking about Matt Ryan's head coaches or offensive coordinators, they did have better years than he had coaches with mustaches than without. Yeah. I don't
Andy Reid
for that.
Andy Reid, but you also had Roman Crennel, so it's kind of a catch 22. And yeah, Malcolm will be joining us, Sean. Malcolm will be there as well with Special Olympics doing unified coverage. So always love there with Malcolm. It's a great time. So make sure you check everything out. We will be down there starting on that Monday. I think that's February 3rd. So we'll be in New Orleans doing a whole bunch of fun interviews, we'll be live, so make sure you guys check that out. Anything else that you thought was a big takeaway, whether it's from that Texans game or something that maybe you took from that you found a storyline heading into this Bills matchup?
We've covered a little bit of Travis bleeping Kelce, which I just feel like it's always our humble duty to remind ourselves and everyone else this 35-year-old man continues to be one of the most unstoppable things in football when the games matter most. Just don't take that for granted. Here's my I talked about this on the radio yesterday, and so I'm going to have to explain it again briefly, but I think it'll make sense. I don't know if you're like this, Sterling. I don't know what it is about me that's like this. I know some people are like this, but I hope most people aren't. You ever sitting on your couch with your dog in your lap or whatever, petting your dog, thinking like, this is great. And then somewhere in the back of course, every day. Then phase 2, somewhere in the back of your head, the thought creeps in that if all goes according to plan, you will outlive your dog. That someday your dog is going to die.
Bleep you, dude, what the hell?
Now listen. This is where I'm coming from, okay? I do that to myself all the time. Like 2 or 3 times a week, I feel like I have the thought of like, I got 2 dogs on. I'm so happy to love my dogs. And someday they're not going to be here anymore. Okay. So listen, I don't like that about myself. I would love if somebody could figure out how I could stop doing that. I'm open to suggestions. It's not pleasant.
This is like the saddest and maddest I've ever been on a podcast.
Your dog's going to live forever. Actually, you're good. But I think about that sometimes, even in good moments, the future dread of when those moments will pass sets on me. I don't know why. Here's what I want to say about Travis Kelce. We're not putting him down. But you very well may have 2 games left to watch the greatest tight end of all time play for your football team in the 2 most meaningful games in his career from an NFL history standpoint, at least, right? This is the real reminder that your dog may die, that your dog will die someday. You may have one more of those games. You may have one more Travis Kelce game. You may have 2. You may have 22 because he could play next year, but we don't know. And so when he puts on a performance on Saturday that he did against the Texans, when he turns a short gain into a long one again because his yards after the catch ability shows up, finishing speed not included, in a huge playoff moment. For me, the only silver lining of my doomsday brain in those dog moments is the reminder that knowing that those moments will eventually no longer be there for me, that it gives me one extra beat to appreciate what I have right then. I take this very long road through sadness and pets and Travis Kelce to make the point to you, you will appreciate what you're watching now if you can remember right before kickoff that this is a finite experience. Travis Kelce, Andy Reid coaching this team, Patrick Mahomes playing for this football team, the dynasty in progress, the 7 consecutive AFC Championship games. Lord willing, we will all watch the Kansas City Chiefs be bad again at some point. The Patriots went from the gutter to a dynasty, back to the gutter to a rebuild now. If we all live long enough to watch as much football as we want to watch, we will watch the Kansas City Chiefs go through that cycle again. So I hope you appreciate how good it is right now, because it's almost impossible for it to get any better. But if it does get any better, it's going to happen over these next 2 games.
So Brisco is having a quarter-life crisis. He's having an existential crisis.
Yeah. Yes, frequently.
He's made me sad.
By the way, Sterling, I'm 30. I don't think it's a quarter-life crisis.
Yeah, and yeah.
I don't think I'm getting 120, bud.
I don't know how diabetes is anymore.
But it doesn't make you live a lot longer.
Okay. So Half-Life Crisis for I'm kidding.
Look, guys, all dogs go to heaven, and Travis Kelce will go to Amazon. So they'll be around, they'll be around. But I want to appreciate the moments while we got them.
Hey Zeus says, "Bring it, Buffalo. I love this shit. I know this will be a great game." Yeah, I'm with you, man. Let's leave on a fun note here.
Not a fun note.
No, that was sad. I got real sad and just I'm just gonna go eat Arby's or something. Maybe get like $30 worth of Taco Bell and just stuff my face.
I do that a lot.
Yeah, that was literally that was last Wednesday. It really was. That Kentucky Hut that's no longer a hut at 119th out here in KC. Oh yeah, I crushed that bad boy.
No more hut.
Yeah, this is going to be a classic yet again. The Chiefs have played 10 in the last 10 head-to-head games with the Chiefs and the Bills. Playoffs and regular season. One team's won the more important ones,
Yes,
but still this remains true. They're 5-5 with 251 points against each other. 251 to 251. 5-5 in their last 10 head-to-head games. Crazy. This would most likely mean it's coming down to the wire, and one of these two teams will break the 251 tie. Again, one of those teams has more important victories in the last 10, but still that remains true. Before we get out of here, I did find some fun Clete Blakeman numbers, and fun is probably a strong word because, But here are some facts about Clete Blakeman. So now you can say these to all the people that you want to who say, well, they favor Patrick and the Chiefs. Here you go. Facts about Clete Blakeman. Calls an average of 15.75 penalties a game. League average is 12.79. He calls 53.17% against the home team. That is about 4% more than league average. Home team has won 31.25% of games he's reffed this year. Yikes.
Huh.
Yeah, not great.
Weird.
Mahomes is 6-5 in games that he has reffed. That includes his first ever start when he played Denver in 2017. And it also does not include when they sat the starters against the Chargers. So if you see some different numbers, that's why. But he is 6-5 in games that Mahomes has played in. And the most fun one, he is the voice and likeness of the Madden ref. If you guys didn't know that. So
He also enjoys long walks on the beach and a nice martini.
So that's Cletus. That's what you need to know about Cletus Blakeman. Real name is Cletus. Don't worry, guys. We're going to talk so much more about the Bills game. I just wanted to do a little rough breakdown right here. So we will dive into all the weak points of Buffalo, including what their secondary has been, especially with the injuries. We can talk about sometimes their, I don't want to say lack of explosive plays, but maybe their lack of a legit wide receiver one. Amari Cooper has, quite frankly, done hardly anything for them this year. We'll talk about their strengths, including running the football with James Cook, as well as that interior defensive line. So we'll get into all of that as the week progresses, including tomorrow. I'll be back with Adam Best. Thursday, you'll hear it from Patrick. Obviously, we'll do pregame, halftime, and postgame show as well. So don't worry about it. We'll have so much fun. And yes, I'm sorry. I'll give more love to George Karlaftis. I've been giving so much love to the Greek Freak. I've been talking about it ad nauseum. I love that dude. Dude is awesome. He talked to Brisco and myself when we did a little softball game together. He didn't want to play softball. He just wanted to talk to Brisco and myself. It was a very, very fun time. Good guy, great player, and playoff Karlaftis is a real thing. Brisco, you'll hear him talk a little bit more in about a half hour or so with some of the boys over there on Only Weird Games. So, Brisco, I guess I'll talk to you next Tuesday after what is hopefully another Chiefs dub.
I would love to talk to you about another playoff victory over the Bills. In the meantime, I'm going to go pet my dogs who will live forever.
This show will live forever. That is the Arrowhead Addict podcast. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us. Give us a review, a like, wherever you get your podcasts. Again, trying to get to 400 reviews. We are so darn close. Until next time, we are out.